Hello everybody, I'm in Toronto with Enrico Letta, who's a former Prime Minister of Italy and is now the Dean of the School of International Affairs at Sciences Po in Paris, and the two of us are here for a meeting of APSIA, which is the Association of Schools of International Affairs, that is meeting here for the next couple of days, and we're going to
very cold here.
Yeah,
very cold.
Coming from Mediterranean Europe, it feels cold. But we're going to be discussing the next couple of days sort of trends in the field of international affairs and how those trends sort of should be impacting teaching and research. So my first question to you is, as the dean of a school and a very senior policy maker, when you look at the world, what are the big trends of change that you see politically? And then I'll ask you about how that impacts the way you think about education. But what are the big trends of change that you see moving forward?
But the big point is the fact that I started this new job for me 4 years ago, 3 years and a half. And I saw in these 3 years an enormous change. So the world of international affairs and international studies 3 years ago was completely different from today.
Right.
And
right.
In terms of difficulties of multilateralism, first of all, and international affairs and international relations studies are based on multilateralism,
right.
More than bilateral relationships. The very heart is multilateralism, and multilateralism today is in deep crisis. So I think this is the key point, the first point. And the other key point is the big influence of the technological disruption as the introduction of new tools,
right.
The change of paradigms, the acceleration of everything in international affairs, international politics, tweets instead of negotiations. That is a complete, I would say, change, and we have to share with our students this change. Our students are all millennials, so for them it's more easy to understand some of these changes.
But isn't that fascinating for the field? I think it's a fascinating moment because you have these two big trends that you've identified that really question the fundamentals of graduate education in IR. I mean, first is the reshaping of the international order, the questioning of multilateralism, the rise of populism, the construction of walls and creation of borders, which really questions the cosmopolitan and global order on which a lot of the IR training and schools are based. And the other, which is tech acceleration, the obsolescence of skills. I was reading a report recently that the validity, the life expectancy of skills that people acquired through formal education has collapsed from like 20 odd years to like 5 years. So we need to renovate our skills constantly. So how do you see these two trends impacting when you think about your school and your students and the training you provide? How do these trends change the way you want to deliver education, both content, pedagogy? Because it's a really testing moment for schools of IR and public policy around the world.
Yes, it is also because you have to add to these two trends maybe the most challenging one, that is the attack to the expertise, to the importance of expertise
right.
in the world of today. And this attack, this diminishing the importance and the role, is something that is, it's the very core of our mission. The expertise, the competence, how to train people, how to sell skills and skills-based knowledge. So I think the most important point today for all of us, for our schools, is how to get people out and not from the mainstream environment only, but how to get people everywhere. In terms of geography, the big risk is to have people only from developed or developing countries, and for us, for instance, the big mission is to find people in the less developed countries out of the traditional path or the traditional tracks, and at the same time in our countries, in our European countries, or in the US, or in the rest of the Western world, how to get people out, people not coming from the usual cursus honorum.
Right.
That is, I think, maybe the most important challenge today, because it is not a challenge of, I would say, contents. It's behavior, it's relationships, it's the way in which you present expertise, knowledge, and the way in which you counterattack, and the way in which exactly.
But let me ask you a final question, which is a bit more on the policy. But you were a policymaker for many years. Isn't there an element here of having to basically say like a mea culpa on the part of the technocratic elite? So when you look at the macro trends in the US and in other places, there are places in the United States where the life expectancy of children is now shorter than that of their parents, which we hadn't seen since the end of the Second World War. Now, there are communities in Europe that are really struggling economically. I mean, there's erosion of the middle class in many of the countries across Europe. The US data, by the way, is particularly shocking. So there's this growing notion of a fracture of the social contract. Whether this is produced by trade or technology, there are all of these diagnoses out there, right? But the reaction against elites is to a large extent constructed, I think, on the sense that not everybody has profited from this order, so we're going to topple it from within. At least this is sort of the emerging narrative, no? And people like you and people like myself and people that run academic institutions and that run political parties and that run large corporations are sometimes blamed directly in many instances for these trends. So not just on the education piece, but on the substance. I mean, do you think there needs to be a much more structured response to the lack of equity of development over the last few decades? How do you see that evolving in the political landscape? And I know it's a huge question, but I wonder if this goes well beyond what academic institutions can do, but it's really a large policy question. How do we reintroduce equity and sustainability into some of the economic trends that we've seen over the years?
It is the most important point today. It is for politics, but also for education. And I give you a data that is for me is a shock for me. It was a shock for me. It's the data for my country, for Italy, young people, the way in which they are used to travel. Only 20% of young people had a travel out of the country, and 0.1% for Erasmus. And we continue to use Erasmus as the flag, of the positive flag of the European integration, for instance, talking Europe. It is, I think, the example of the fact that if we think, and Erasmus is the most spectacular success of the European Union, but is the example of the elitism of what we build up, and how to get more people involved in these processes, in these opportunities. I think this is the key point for university institutions, but for education at large. I think it's secondary school is the key point, and Erasmus for secondary school, binding Erasmus, I would say, would be, I think, the most important revolution for the next 5 years of the European Union, for instance.
Well, I mean, we could go on for a very long time. I'll leave you there. These are some of the challenges that we're grappling with from the higher education point of view. How do we think about the social and political fracture that we're living? How does that impact the way we think about our role, about our mission, about what we teach in our classroom? These trends of rapid change, of political fracture, have to be taken into account in the way we think about our job. And I think that whatever the solution that comes out of this, there would be a strong, technical, complex, sophisticated element to it. So I don't think that we've seen the end of the age of expertise. We just need to make sure that that expertise is well channeled, communicated, constructed, and put to good use when it comes to policy crafting. And that's some of the work that we're trying to do here. Thank you so much for your time, and we're off to the meetings. We're going to get some jackets on first, but thank you a lot.
Thank you, Manuel.
Thank you.